Now, let's explore using the float property to create our layouts. So let's go to, well, first I'm just going to select this div here and just copy it, box 7. And let's go to section 3 and we'll just change the formatting here a little bit like so. And we will paste in our div. Let's change this to be box 8, and then we'll place an 8 inside. Now, let's copy the div we just updated, and we'll paste this 2 more times, and then we'll just update the numbers. So we're going to have the class box 8 on all of them. And let's just update our numbers. Okay, so we're in section 3. So just to save a little bit of time, I'm going to I'll just grab like box 1 here. Okay, and now let's find section 3, because we're working in section 3. These elements are in 3, so we should follow our rules with section 3, like so. So we're going to change this to box 8. And our position can stay or can remain relative. Let's stay with our width and our height. And our margin and padding can be 0 for the moment. And what we're going to do is, after our border color, let's drop down and we will type in our property of float. And we're going to begin the floats on the left-hand side. And what we're going to do is, now on our clear property, we are going to set the clear to none. So floats also remove elements from the normal flow of the document, like absolute elements do. Okay? So what will happen, well, let's just take a look, and then, so we'll save, and let's update our page. And now you will see our 3 elements, 8, 9, and 10. They're beginning to draw on the left-hand side, and they're moving across the screen. Okay. Now you'll notice that section 3, our P tag, section 3, has been moved over here. And really the strange thing is, section 3 really believes it's still here. These elements are moving it over visually, but if we were to use margin, and you can experiment with this and see if it does in fact work. So if you were to add 100 pixels of left margin to section, it would be here. If you added 200, it would be here. If you added 300, it would be here. It would take a number greater than 300 to actually get section to move over. So even if we used 100, it meaning the section, the P element, P tag, would think it's here, but it's drawing over here. It's kind of odd how it's working, but it's just the nature of using floats. And we'll deal with that with clears also. So you'll see that here in a moment. But anyway, let's go back to our code, and let's go ahead, and on box 8 we will set margin of 1 rem, and we will save. And you can see how you can get your layouts to kind of take on a grid sort of appearance. Now, I'm not going to worry about this section part being here right now. We'll deal with that in a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to change our float from left to right. So let's change our to right, and we will save. And it will update our page. And now the floats begin to draw on the right side and then move, in this case, to the left. And you'll also note 8 is first, as it should be, but it's on the right-hand side. Then 9, then 10. When we had a left float, it was 8, 9, and then 10. And you'll also see, now that we're floating on the right-hand side, that our section is not being influenced or affected, our section 3 type. Okay, now let's go back and we're going to create our own custom rule here. So let's call this dot, and we're going to call this dot clear. Okay. And we are going to clear both. Now, we can clear left floats, we could clear right floats, or we could go ahead and clear left and right floats. All right, so we'll do clear both, and what we'll do is come over to our number 9, and we'll add a second class. So after box 08, we'll add a space, and then we're going to add our clear. Okay, and then we will save. Let's go back and refresh our page, and when we scroll down, you'll see that 8 is floating left. It has a clear none on it, and then 9 is floating left, but we did clear both, and that's going to make this float element now clear this float path, if you will, and draw underneath. So it's like starting another block level, if you will. And then 10 will continue to float. All right, so let's go back and we will change our float to left, and we will go ahead and just remove our clear like so. Now what we'll do is let's copy our 3 divs and we will paste. And we're going to keep all box 8, but let's change this one to 11, 12, 13. Okay, so 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. We'll save. Let's refresh. Okay, now my section is making this one misbehave right now. So what we can do is we would need to place a clear on this element. All right, I'm not going to mess with that right now. You get the idea that our elements will float starting on the left hand side. When we run out of space, then those elements will drop down and begin their float from the left, moving over to the right. Okay. All right. Now let's take a look at, let's make number 13 float to the right. So we're going to just create, so we have a clear both, and let's just make one that says right, and we'll do float right, and we'll add our class right, which has our float right, and we'll do that. We'll add that to box or to number 13 to override the left. So let's go ahead and just type in right, and we'll save, and let's see what happens. Okay, so now 13 has moved over to the right hand side. Okay. Okay, so with that being said, we'll come back in the next video and we'll talk about clears and we'll fix what's going on with our type here. All right, but if you just think about this for a moment, if you had what is your main element, okay? And we could tell section 1 to float left, and we could do clear none. We could have this section float left, clear both, and then we could have this section float left, clear both, and then we could have the aside float right, and we should get the exact same layout we have here. But it would actually be more ideal, it would be more modular working with floats than it is necessarily throwing absolutes in with our relatives. Now, there's nothing wrong with using absolutes. We don't want to abuse using them and rely on them too much, but we're going to move our way to using more and more relatives. We're going to start to feel more comfortable using floats to create our columns and our rows. And then later on, we'll begin to explore Flexbox and CSS Grid. Flexbox sort of addresses some of the shortcomings of floats. I still have a preference for floats, but there are some positive attributes of using Flexbox also. All right, so in the next video, we'll take a look at fixing this, and then we'll also show you another little caveat of floats and why we need to clear them.